and I will call on the relevant officer to present their report. A solid green indicates a mic is in the queue to go live. Committee members will be given priority, and I will invite each member in the queue to speak and those with a raised hand attending remotely. After you have spoken, please ensure that your mic is turned off in the chamber or lower your hand and put your mic off if attending remotely. Those attending remotely, please ensure your device is positioned so that your image is clear to the other participants, and please speak clearly and concisely directly at the camera. When calling for agreement over the recommendations at each item, you may do so by voice in the chamber and a no-show or raised hands remotely. In regards to declarations of interest, members are reminded of the following protocol. In the chamber, you must leave the meeting and sit in the members' area or by ending the call remotely. And following consideration of the item, you will be invited back into the meeting by the bell, or the clerk will go out and get you. The bell's not working. Or by the moderator if remotely. Please ensure you are available to accept the invite to rejoin. Finally, a reminder that the meeting is being live streamed and recorded. The recording will be made available on the Comhairle's website following the meeting. Item 5 will be taken in private at the end of the meeting. Prior to moving into private, participants other than the relevant officers and members will be asked to leave the virtual meeting. If necessary, there will be a short recess to allow for this process and to resume with a private item. I would also like to welcome Angela Allen, Area Support and Improvement Partner, and Mr Andrew Reeves, Area Convener from Children's Hearing Scotland, who will deliver a presentation in relation to Children's Hearing Scotland. Before we start the meeting proper, I'd just like to go through a few good news stories recently. And the first one is Castlebay and Jorgary Primary. Wider Achievement Awards are underway there. Primary 5 pupils have started their High 5 Youth Scotland Awards, and P7 pupils have started their Dynamic Youth Awards. In Castlebay Secondary, in partnership with CLD, 7 S5 pupils successfully completed their Duke of Edinburgh qualifying expedition this weekend. Balvenie School, last session 10 pupils were involved as members of the Children's Parliament as part of the Climate Assembly in advance of COP26. And as a result of the children's work for the Climate Assembly, they have been invited to COP26 in Glasgow this November. Sir Scott School, GME and Gaelic learner pupils in S1 to S3 enjoyed 4 days of outdoor activities with Sports Gaelic and Common Gaelic instructors. They continue to expand on the number of subjects delivered through the medium of Gaelic, with music and French, believe it or not, being taught in Gaelic. They want the agenda. So item 1 is the minute of meeting 15th June 2021, and that's for approval. Great, thank you. Item 2 is declaration of interests, and members are asked to declare an interest they may have in any items on the agenda, and it would be helpful if members explained why they're declaring an interest in the item concerned. Does anyone have a declaration? See no hands. Okay, thank you. If it's okay with the committee, I'd like to take agenda item 6 at this stage. Is everyone okay with that? Okay, thank you. So item 6 is Community Learning and Development Partnership 21 to 24, and the report seeks approval for the publication of the Community Learning and Development Partnership Plan 2021 to 2024. And Fiona McInnes-Begg is available to speak to the report and answer any questions. Fiona.
Hi there. Pleased to be able to present to you the partnership plan that's been created by a steering group of partners as part of the responsibilities that the CLD regulations place on local authorities, where we're required to publish a plan every 3 years detailing the support and opportunities that we're going to provide to communities along with our key stakeholders. I suppose the key thing about the partnership plan for the first time is that we're calling it a partnership plan. Previous iterations have meant that it's been called a CLD strategy, and we've listened to partners and they've said that if it's going to be a partnership plan, then they would like to be acknowledged for us working in partnership together. For for the sector today, what we're looking for is for the committee to endorse the plan so it can then be publicised on our website, along with the other 31 local authorities, and it will be just in time because we've just had notification of return inspection. We're in the middle of a continuing engagement process with our HMIE colleagues, and just this week we've received notice of them wishing to return to see us. So all good news. Pleased to hear, Paul, that you were acknowledging the work that CLD are doing in terms of supporting schools around the accreditation of young people and the activities that we're doing across the islands. So I'm happy to take any questions that people want. Obviously, the attachment is the partnership plan itself, and perhaps, you know, in the spirit of partnership working, perhaps I could draw your attention to number 7 in the partnership plan, where it talks about individuals and communities gaining the skills and knowledge required to make positive life choices, enhancing their health and well-being. And really what we're talking about there is it's the notion of all the partners working together for the benefit of local communities. So I could talk and talk, but I won't. Happy to take any questions you've got.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Yeah, I'm very supportive of the work CLD do. Obviously, I'm a bit biased, but yeah, I think the stuff that happens in the community is really important. So do members have any questions or comments? Anyone online? Councillor Charlie Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome this report of CLD, and like yourself, Chair, very supportive of the work throughout the Western Isles and that. Just one point to kind of pick up on, and that is the aspect, there's an expectation from the government that CLD will encourage partners to contribute to a series of outcomes, and there's a list there. Within that, Fiona, where does the Community Empowerment Act come within that, and should we be identifying that as part of the outcomes going forward?
I think we've managed to encapsulate that, Councillor Nicholson, in terms of individuals and communities are actively involved in shaping their future through youth and community voice. So it's on page 8, and what we're talking about there is doing what we can to ensure that communities get a say and actually probably lead the discussion around what needs to change to make their communities more viable and more sustainable. So I'm hoping we've captured it in there. Obviously, what we don't have here is the detail. Partners and the CLD section within the council all have plans that relate, or all will develop plans that relate to each of these outcomes. So the detail might well follow on from that. We tried to ensure that this was about strategic direction and to make sure that partners felt that they were contributing to something that they could readily support. And that's why it's, you know, it's a high-level document rather than the detail that you might have seen perhaps previously in a team plan or, you know, in other partners' plans.
Thank you, Fiona, for that response, and it clarifies it. I still would say, Chair, that within the document that the community empowerment is kind of joined in. The reason I say that is that the next few years, especially if we've got a document that we should actually put in the community empowerment in print in it, because there is going to be opportunities the next few years in community empowerment to access funding, as Fiona is indicating, with partners and with groups and take it forward. So it's more a point of information and adding to the excellent report before us. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent. Thanks, Charlie. Were you wanting to come back on that, Fiona? Are you happy?
No, I mean, I agree with Charlie's comments. I think what we're doing around community engagement is critical.
Yeah, okay, thanks for that. Any other hands? Councillor Gordon Murray.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee, all I would like to say is just reiterate your comments and Councillor Nicholson's comments, and give a big thanks to Fiona and her team for all the great work they are doing. A lot of the work is under the radar, given the fact that there's kind of protection issues, but I know for a fact that their work makes a huge difference to our children's lives. So I would like to thank them and the team. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Convener.
Thank you, Chair. Just following on from that, quite clearly this is a plan that's going to be over the next 3 years, 2021 to 2024. Presumably there'll be some kind of benchmarking done as this moves forward, and presumably again there will be a number of reports coming before the committee over time, rather than waiting to the end of the plan, as it were. I think it'd be really useful for members to have an ongoing dialogue, both with CLD and also with the young folk that CLD are working with.
Excellent. Thanks, Convener. Fiona, will you want to come back on that? I see you're nodding. So
I was just thinking that in terms of our reporting of progress around the plan, then it's scheduled to be on a very regular basis as we move forward, and it was something that the steering group were very they were very confident that they wanted to do, to make sure that the profile of the plan and the work that was being done by partners in conjunction with ourselves was promoted widely, so that people were able to see the difference that has been made through the work that's been done. So there'll be regular reporting, both through the committee structure in the council and also through the CPP.
excellent. Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments from members? In that case, do members agree with the recommendation at 3.1? Agreed. Thank you. Thanks, Fiona. Okay. Next up is the presentation, and today we have a presentation from the Eilean Siar Area Support Team. I'll now invite Angela Allen and Andrew Reeves to deliver their presentation on Children's Hearing Scotland and the Eilean Siar Area Support Team. Presentations on the screen there. And do we have Angela and Andrew?
Chair, they're in Committee Room 1. I'm seeing Stephen. Committee Room 1 still on mute.
No. Angela and Andrew, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can, thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you can hear me now. That's great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you'd like to start whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us this afternoon. My name is Angela Allen. I am the Area Supports and Improvement Partner with Children's Hearing Scotland. And I'll let Andrew introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Andrew Reeves. I'm the Area Convener for Children's Hearing Scotland.
So, Children's Hearing Scotland supports our most vulnerable children and young people across Scotland. That looks a bit like a stadium of children, young people and families that we support across Scotland. Those children and young people are supported by volunteers, panel members and area support team members. And those volunteers would fit a large theatre. So that's the number, around about 3,000 people, volunteers that support that stadium of children and young people. In turn, those volunteers are supported by a small group of staff that would probably fit into a conference centre. So it's a small team. There are less than 50 members of support staff supporting over 3,000 people. Very locally, in Stornoway, this is our hearing centre. Our panel members meet with children, families, and all the support staff that go into supporting our most vulnerable children. It looks like a small team. They do an absolute power of work. There are 6 area support team members and 23 panel members. The area support team do the kind of health and well-being care of our panel members. They do training. They look at all of the kind of support that our panel members need, and they also look at quality assurance. So they ensure that the panel members are doing the best that they possibly can in a hearing centre, and they also look at complaints if need be as well. The people that make up the panel community are all local to this area. So across Scotland, every area support team and every panel member needs to have a connection with the hearing centre or the group of panel members that they're involved with, whether that's through work, through where they live, or through their social life. It makes it so important every year when we do our annual recruitment that we can get local people. And because they're doing it on a voluntary basis and hearings take place during the day, it is a massive responsibility for those volunteers to get the support of their employers when they need to, so they can take a couple of half days off per month to go to hearings and look after our most vulnerable children. Children's Hearing Scotland, in the same way as all the council services, have their strategic plans that look at a year or 3 years. Over ours, we are looking at better protecting and upholding the rights of children and young people. The UNCRC will all sound very familiar to you all, and making sure that children's rights are upheld within that very specific part of their life when they're in a hearing is really important to us. The quality of training that we provide to our panel members so that they in turn can do the best for their children is one of the biggest parts of what we do. We have an extra college that provides all of our training, and nowadays that's a good mixture of online as well as face-to-face training. Building an effective and empathetic panel. A lot of that is about the care and well-being of our panel members so that they are well enough supported to make really difficult decisions. And those decisions are made within those hearings. There's no breaks, no convening to discuss things. They make the decisions when they have the information and the people in front of them. We also want to make sure that we are well informed and influential in our environment and our community. This will resonate with Fiona, who's just finished speaking about partnership working. Everything that Children's Hearings does their work in partnership. So we work very closely with the children's reporters, who are a separate organisation from ourselves. We also make sure that we work very closely with education and social work and health and the police, with solicitors, with advocacy services, so that we can all make the best decision for the children that are in those hearing rooms. We have had a lot going on this year, just with the pandemic, and on top of that, we have had a number of really big bills coming through. I would say starting in 2020, the end of 2020, with the advocacy bill. And what that did was meant that every child gets given the opportunity to have an advocate for their hearings. It had a bill attached to it, and all of our panel members and the children's reporters and the people who support our children all needed to learn what the bill was about and how to use it in a hearing. In exactly the same way, the Children's Scotland Act, which was another big one, in particular the part that looked at siblings, brothers and sisters, has a huge impact in the hearing about who has a right to be there. And it's not across the board right, it's a specific to that individual child and their specific relationship with that sibling or sibling type relationship. The UNCRC has additional functions that it's going to add in later on in this year that makes the children's rights much more robust within a hearing. The age of criminal responsibility, again, that's another bill. It has another impact for 16 and 17-year-olds that will come through the hearing system rather than going into criminal justice. And over especially the last year or two, being trauma-informed and using a trauma-informed approach so that we are not re-traumatizing children and young people when they come to hearings, when they read the papers that are written about them, the reports that are written about them. So we're going to be putting in a lot of training for all of our panel members in the near future to make sure that we are being kind. I think, and as corporate parents, being loving and caring towards the children that we are responsible for. The trauma-informed approach should mean that hearings are a lot less stressful for everybody who attends them. I think over the years, with all of the bills that have been introduced, they have become increasingly stressful things to attend. And that's staff that say that. You know, I've heard it from social workers saying it's one of the most stressful things they do nowadays. And if a social worker feels like that, then how does a child feel? And we need to change that completely on its head. What gives us an excellent opportunity to do that is the independent peer review and the Promise, and Promise Scotland, which is the working group. The Promise, which came from the independent peer review, was a massive study that took years across Scotland, and as it says, it is independent. They created 5 foundations, the things that we really need to focus on, that everybody that is a corporate parent that has a care responsibility for a child or young person has to focus on. But they didn't just say, you've got to do this, off you go. They said, we will give you the finances, we will give you the training, we will give you the support that you need to do that, and we will give you time. We are changing an entire system. So this is a 10-year project. And they're looking for the whole of Scotland to get involved in this. So Children's Hearing Scotland is just one small part of that. What the Promise have said over the next few years is that they want every child to have a good childhood. They want the entire family to be supported, not just the child or young person. They want to make sure that the planning that we all as partners have in place dovetails together, and it's robust and it has enough resources to do what we really need it to do. That we make sure that we have the staff training in place, so whether it's volunteers within children's hearings, volunteers within CLD, anywhere, as well as all of our staff. And we also want to make sure that it builds the capacity in a community so that we get the training, the skills, the knowledge, and the time that we need to make the system in Scotland better, not just different. They give these very specific messages to the hearing system that we need to be actively listening to our children. Our children are the heart of our system, and we need to prove it, and we need to evidence it. We need to show that their voices, as much in their language as possible, is heard in hearings, and not just in the hearing, but in the reports, in the preparation, the before and the after of it too. There needs to be a real culture change in the decision making that we do, and that is about the UNCRC, it's about children's rights, it's about children feeling that they have some kind of say and control and power, empowerment around their hearing, that it's theirs, it belongs to them. They feel that they are influencing their own lives. It's not just the adults around them that are making the decisions for them. I've kind of mentioned children's rights already. The decriminalisation of them is about the 16, 17-year-olds not being treated as adults, but recognising that they are still going through puberty. They are not fully formed, functioning adults. They do still need our support. And trying to destigmatise the care system so that talking about love, talking about care, it doesn't hold that same stigma and trauma to it as it has in the past. We want to make sure that we protect relationships, the relationships that children have, and that they continue into the future if that's what a child wants. I've spoken about being trauma informed already. We have to help to deliver this in as good a time as possible. And also, there's a feeling that there are maybe too many children coming through the system. The early intervention and prevention that we talk about needs to be financed and needs to be in place. That multi-agency meetings that happen locally and single service input have the resources that they need so that fewer and fewer children actually come to hearings. So that hearings are specialised, they are only there when they really, really need to be there. And finally, to look at the role of volunteers. We are going to look at whether we are effective as a volunteering organisation and how and if we need to change that. So all of this is tied into the promise and Promise Scotland. We're not talking about quick wins and easy fixes. We're talking about taking a very good, robust look at what we do, how we do it. We are starting small and thinking big. So a small local project where we look at changing one thing within our hearing system. The thinking big around that is about getting the resources where we need it. It's about getting national support and backing where we need it. It's about getting the interdependency right. So all of the partners that have some kind of interest in children and young people that are in care are around the same table, that we're talking the same language, that we have the same time and resource that we can input into making these better. For some of the projects that we're doing, we are going to do these on a small scale so that we can test them to see if they work and adapt them still on a small scale until we feel that it's as good as it can get and then upscale. We're doing this right across the whole of Scotland. They're national projects as well. Every local authority is buying into the promise, applying for the funding that's available through the promise and starting that partnership working. And we are part of that. Children's Hearings is part of that. We have a really exciting opportunity to influence and change legislation as part of this too. And we have a couple of years to do that. So what small things we do locally can influence legislation. And we're at the point just now where we are beginning to do the thinking and the planning and sharing that with our partners. And what we will do next is the doing and evaluating it, those small tests of change, those improvements, and then thinking again. There are particular tools that we use for this, but what we look for is that holistic approach to this, that partnership approach to this. So there are big things ahead of us in Children's Hearing Scotland, and it impacts on everybody that works with care experienced children and young people. I must say we do already have good relationships with our partners. What we need to do is improve those, make them more robust, and make sure that our partners have the time and commitment that we're being allowed to have as well. Thank you for listening to me. I hope I haven't gone on for too long. If you have any questions or any comments about this, please feel free to ask. And Andrew, if I've missed anything, please feel free to chip in. Thank you. Did I miss anything? No. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Angela. That was a really interesting report, and I think as members, it was really good for us to be able to hear what's happening with the hearing system. So the work that's happening this with the Hebridean Year of Care and the promise and all that, it's all matching up together with the UNCRC, and I think the fact that you're empowering the children in the process is really, really important. Just wondering if any members have any questions or comments at this stage. Councillor Charlie Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the report and the work under Andrew's chairmanship within the islands and throughout the islands, and also the work of the Children Hearing Scotland and everything that they do. One of the things that was mentioned, Chair, was the promise, and maybe I'll put a little question to the Director in regards to that, on the basis of I'm led to believe we did get some finance from Scottish Government, and have we appointed an officer to take it forward and work in partnership with groups like the Area Support Team and Children's Hearing Scotland? And I'll leave that as my first question. The second one I want to pick up on just now, Chair, is the wonderful volunteers that we have in these islands that are involved in the Area Support Team. And the possibility, Chair, of getting a report now. I know it possibly wouldn't come back to Education and Children's Services as such, but with your permission, Chair, that we would ask the Director to engage with the Chief Executive in regards to trying to get extra special leave for those that are involved in volunteering for the Area Support Team within the Western Isles. Over the years, many of these people have had to kind of take holidays and other things while they travel throughout the islands, down to US for hearings, down to Barra, vice versa, some coming up to Lewis and Harris. And it is one area that I've heard over the last while that is putting pressure on those that are involved in the Western Isles Area Support Team. And it would be helpful, and I know it's got to go through a process and an engagement, but I would ask, Chair, if that would be possible, and come back to the question of the promise to the Director, please.
Thank you, Charlie. Director?
We have appointed somebody through the promise. We're going to work through CLD on developing this initiative, and we're also going to set up a group across the department so that we can work in a more streamlined way in delivering support across the Children's Services agenda. At the moment, it'll be Graham Miller that will be leading that, working with Mary Claire Ferguson. We also want to link in with the Children and Young People Planning Partnership in terms of supporting young people more holistically in terms of what we're doing and what we're delivering, so that I think they're overwhelmed a wee bit, schools, young people, by the offer and all the offers we've got in terms of mental health, etc. So if we can be a wee bit more strategic in supporting them, we'll do our very best to deliver that. That's a promise.
Thank you. And in terms of Charlie's other point, I don't know if that's one for you or for Malcolm.
The volunteering one we'll certainly look at. Absolutely, we'll be sympathetic.
Thank you, Chair, for that, and thank you for the Director for the answer to that, and take it forward with the Chief Executive, because it is one point that's been raised a number of times with me by the area support, and it's something we need to be supporting the volunteers with. They are committed, they do go well over the line in regards to training and other things within the partnership, and if we can help a wee bit more rather than taking a third or a quarter of their holidays to do the work that we are partnering in. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Charlie. Mr. Barrow, you want to come in there? Let's put your hand.
No, Chair, all the points have been answered, but again, just from the officer perspective, thanks for the presentation. And incidentally, I was pleased to see in a letter from from Fiona Duncan, the chair of the Promise, that Promise Scotland will be keeping in touch with the National Care Service proposals with, I think, absolutely the right question. Will keep the promise as regards services for children and families, and that I think is absolutely the right question, and that's the way the Comhairle will approach our response to the National Care Service consultation for children and families services as well. So thank you for that on behalf of the officers.
Convener.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Angela, for the presentation. I think it is really important that that this works alongside community learning and development, because there is no doubt that even with volunteers, there will be times where they find what they're involved in as being quite harrowing at times. And I do think we need to be mindful of the support that's required, not just for the young people and the children, but also for those who are helping them through what obviously must be quite difficult times for them. So certainly welcome the opportunity to have listened to the presentation, and also hope that it continues to work alongside other agencies as well, and that will take some of the pressure off those who are currently volunteering. And the last thing we want is for some of these people who may be struggling in their own lives, we should be supportive of them as much as we can be. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Convener. Any other questions or comments from members? Okay. Just want to say thank you very much to Angela and Andrew for presenting to us today. And we'll move on to agenda item 4. That is performance management, and this report provides an overview of the Education, Skills and Children's Services Department Business Plan progress and related performance for the first quarter of 2021-22. The Director for Education, Skills and Children's Services is available to speak to the report and answer any questions. William.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few brief comments from me. We continue to work in exceptional times, and a lot of our audit work has had to be done virtually, really, because we're trying to minimise visits to schools and other establishments. So I won't go through the detail of it. The detailed information is on Interplan and in the business plan, and with most of the activities really are picked up in section 6 here. There, as you can see in 6.3, we had one foster care review which wasn't completed within agreed timescales, but we've appointed an additional fostering and adoption social worker now, so that will help us with this. In terms of 6.5, the Gaelic specific grant, the action there was the Gaelic policy of the department, and we've now got a draft in place. We'll continue to work across the council in terms of Gaelic issues so that we're more streamlined in what we deliver. And 6.7, obviously, some audits weren't carried out because of the pandemic, cleaning audit being one of these. Now, as you heard earlier from Fiona, Education Scotland are going to resume with inspection activity post-October. So that will change for us. We have 3 schools being visited, either in person or virtually, in terms of continuing engagement, and CLD are also being visited. So at the very end there, you will see that eSchool is mentioned in terms of 10.2. The National Digital School, there is a meeting in October as regards the direction that the government wishes to take in terms of the National Digital School. We'll be attending, and we would see eSchool as being a part of that continued engagement. And in terms of COVID-19 and 10.3, we've got continued cases in schools, and I think schools are dealing with them very effectively, and they're being supported by Dawn MacLeod in the department. So happy to take any questions.
Thanks, William. Members, any questions or comments? Councillor Ray McKenzie.
Thanks, Chairman. On the question of pointers, which, as we all know, is a fantastic asset, has been in the past. What is it? I mean, it's quite vague here that it's going to be a shared resource for Who Cares, ELR, and pointers. Maybe could we have a bit more information on that, Mr. McDonald?
I think that's something, again, discussions are ongoing at the moment with Who Cares. The town hall changed, and I think we need to have more discussions to see what the usage is and pointers, etc. And we will bring a further report to this committee in terms of the direction of travel. But at the moment, it's just conversations, and we haven't got the detail ironed out as yet.
Yeah. I can come back. Thank you. Yeah, because pointers, if there's any, I hope there's no question of pointers being lost at this facility, because the users of pointers certainly, are suffering from that point of view. And I know, I have been approached personally on behalf of former clients, or the clients, if you can call them that, but those that use pointers. And it's a fantastic facility and gives real independence, to the clients.
Okay, thank you. We'll bear that in mind as we progress, and we will consult with people.
Thank you, Ray. Thanks, Ronald Fraser.
Thank you, Chair. Referring to item 10.2, eSchool and the fledgling National Digital School of Scotland, has the Comhairle had any initial discussions with the Scottish Government whether this could potentially be a source of income for the Comhairle?
It's ongoing, and as you know, eSchool's been gathering quite a lot of income over the years, but it's just at the moment it's an annual income stream, and it's something I think in discussing it with the government, we would look at this as being transferring to permanence. Even although the pandemic hopefully will end, I think digital learning will continue, particularly in rural communities and with the different ways in which young people can learn. And the government has given a promise that young people can do hires at any time of their choosing, and a digital school will be part of it, and we'll be making strong representations in terms of eSchool to be a continued part of it. But I think the first meeting of this group is taking place in October, so it'll be preemptive of me to say what the actual outcome will be, but I'm very hopeful that eSchool will be part of it.
And just one short follow-up question. Would you say that Comhairle, out of all of Scotland's 32 local authorities, is best placed to lead this with the Scottish Government?
Well, I think Glasgow would probably put a case forward from their own director, but I think the excellent work that my predecessors started and led by Angus MacLennan definitely puts us at the forefront in terms of digital education.
Agree with that. Any other comments or questions from members? Yeah, Councillor Mackenzie.
Just one query on the financial. I'm sure that it's a straightforward explanation, but Gaelic and culture, there's the total budget, and the actual budget is not zero, but minus 228,000. So there must be some explanation for that.
I will follow up on the detail of that and come back to you. That hadn't caught my eye, if I'm honest.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Any other members? It's quite difficult to see the red light, so if I ignore you, it's not on purpose. Okay, and there's no hands raised online. In that case, do members agree the recommendation at 3.1? Agreed. Thank you. The following item, item 5, we'll consider in private at the end of the meeting, so we'll move on to item 7. And this report provides information on the current approaches adopted to supporting children and young people's mental health and well-being across our schools. Marie-Claire Ferguson is available to speak to the report and answer any questions. Marie-Claire.
Thank you very much, Chair. So good afternoon, everyone. And as was mentioned, the report was really to provide an update on the current approaches adopted in our schools to support children and young people's mental health. And as we continue through recovering from the recent pandemic, there has been continued requirement to focus on health and well-being and supporting positive mental health within our schools. Our school staff have to be commended on the work they've done and commitment in supporting our young people over this period of time and onwards. And the report itself really looks at the different stages and the work that's happened from 2019 when we, as a Comhairle, looked to becoming a nurturing authority, and that ethos within our nurturing school has been supported by staff who have continually been involved in training over the last number of months, particularly over the pandemic period when the training moved to online training, and we were able to capture a huge amount of staff in that. We hope through this report that we'll look more strategically in our report, and a new document came through from the department on refreshing policies and practice in line with the newly established children and young people's mental health and wellbeing. It's a very good document and a very important learning resource that will help frame our whole school approach to supporting our children and young people's mental health and wellbeing. I would hope that you will note this report, and I'm happy to take any questions with regards to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very important report. I think our young people's mental health's taken a bit of a battering during COVID and getting back into the normal swing of things. So really good to see that. Any questions or comments from members? Councillor Carl McLean.
Thanks, Chair. I've just asked the Director, a number of meetings ago, there was talk about appointing counsellors in schools for mental health in particular. And with the increase in over the past 18 months, has there been increase in appointments to schools for specifically for mental health?
We've been working with Counselling and Family Mediation Western Health, and they've been using 6 officers, and we've had a further 6 officers trained as well. We haven't as yet put counsellors into schools, but we're in the process of moving on it, and Mary Claire is working with members of the Health Board to appoint some counsellors in schools. We want to liaise with schools to see what the actual need is. A lot of young people prefer online referrals, but we acknowledge that some prefer face-to-face as well. So it is a work in progress. The answer to your question is no, we haven't, but we hope to in the very near future.
Can someone put their microphone off?
Sorry. At that time, I thought that would be an additional within the guidance department, so that you put in an extra member of staff to work on that specifically. But that's not the case.
I think that was the intention, but Mary Claire can come in here as well. But I think young people have said that they prepare to, in terms of this counselling, to work with people that don't have any background knowledge as regards their own situation, etc., and they want the anonymity that it involves. And sometimes that can be face-to-face. And we'll have to think about the best venue for young people to meet with counsellors, apart from the online forum. But we want to give them as much of a menu as we can to give them that privacy and to deal with, because we've got such a wide range of different issues that young people have. We want to support them. It's not an easy one, and I'm not going to give an answer off the cuff, but Mary Claire is working with colleagues on that. Mary Claire, I don't know if you want to add anything to what I've said.
Certainly, Willie, I would agree with what you've said, and we've certainly had in our recent meetings with head teachers last week. In fact, we are looking to really carry on and move forward with that in consultation with the 4 heads in our secondary schools, with a view to looking at counselling in schools there, and then that supporting the cluster of schools of our primaries. So, as you said yourself, Willie, very much the feedback is a need for a blended approach for our young people.
Thanks for that. Happy, Cal. Councillor Roddy Mackay.
Thanks, Chair. It's drawing your attention to item 6.2 of the report, Willie. It's good to see that the Comhairle is working with the advisory group of the Scotland pupils for the making a safe space. Now, it's interesting that we're talking about mental health, but we're talking about the adults speaking to the children about mental health. Upon speaking to some of the pupils in Scotland, they're quite keen to set up a self-help group of pupils to talk to pupils, so that they don't have adult intervention. Is that something that's been explored a wee bit by the Comhairle?
It is, Councillor Mackay, something that we've explored. And we've run a programme we mentioned before, Mentors and Violence programme down in Surrey Scott, which was excellent, where young people 6th, 5th year were working with their younger peer groups, and they were doing that, and we were looking to extend that across the other 4 schools. And Mary Claire met with a group of young people in Scotland last week, and they were very clear that they wanted a lead at what they did. And I will hold my hands up and say that we need to empower the young people in our care in terms of making decisions about their own future, I think. I don't know, Mary Claire, if you want to add more to that.
No, certainly. It was the first of, I hope, a number of meetings we'll have with the group, and it's a pilot we're using at the time just now. If you excuse me just for a second, please.
Do you want to come back in?
Yeah, it's good to hear that, Willie. I feel they need commended, really, these young people, that they want to reach out to the younger children, not even just to younger children, but in some cases to people older than themselves, and make sure that people are looked after. I think it's very good that we're supporting them. It's very good that we're giving them this opportunity to do this, and the more of this type of work that we can do, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I think one of the things we've got to do is to empower our young people more in terms of decision making and the shape of the schools they're in. And the previous presentation referred to the promise and United Nations, the right of young people in terms of an education, etc. So we'll work with them, but it is a work in progress, and I would say that we're learning with them rather than telling them what to do, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah, I agree entirely. That's the ethos that I started out as my chairmanship with, is getting young people more involved in democratic processes. Councillor Ronald Fraser.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mary Claire, for this report. Yeah, a few weeks ago, I read a very sad article in the Glasgow Herald from data provided by Public Health Scotland, showed that waiting lists for child mental health referrals had doubled in the last year. Coupled with that, this year we've had a 14-year high in self-harm admissions into hospitals in Scotland. Now, the Scottish Children's Services Coalition and Audit Scotland describe this as being rather grave and serious. The Scottish Children's Services Coalition say that it's potentially the tip of the iceberg, as only inpatient data is recorded and many children with self-harm issues are not admitted to hospital. So I would like to ask the Director or Mary Claire, are these national stats mirrored here in Western Isles, and are we fully equipped in providing early intervention support to our young people?
The statistics locally are quite worrying. I've mentioned counselling and family mediation previously. They have about 200 referrals, either through services or directly from the young people themselves every 6 months. So 200 is quite a lot in a small community of 3,500 young people. So it's 7-8% or whatever. I would probably say that the early intervention that you mentioned, was mentioned previously, is key to that. And I know that Mary Claire, working with a team, and I've mentioned before, we're trying to work with with Eilean through the Community Planning Partnership. Early intervention is undoubtedly key, and we're looking at family approaches, because I think in everything that we do, looking at a child in isolation, it's too late really. We need to work far more closely with preschool and families to try and help this. I think we've got a long way to go, if I'm being honest, Councillor Fraser. I wouldn't say that we're probably as well equipped as any authority in Scotland to deal with it, but we have to work more closely across every agency to be more effective. Mary Claire.
Thank you very much, Mr. MacDonald. Certainly I would agree too, and I think that we are in a very fortunate position in that our schools and our staff know our pupils well and our families well and know situations, and I hope that for the most part come in early with that early intervention, but we have got a long way to go. And within my report, I mentioned the fact that we need to look more strategically in our approach in order that we have that universal support. And we'd hope then that we'd capture that early intervention and then a much more targeted and probably more blended approach to meet the needs of the young people at the time. But we certainly have had very unprecedented times, and anxiety has certainly been something that's come through very strongly from our young people across our schools, and that's even from the younger stages too. But as Mr. MacDonald said, it is work in progress, but we certainly have a strong commitment from our staff and the wider staff within our schools and agencies to work together to do the best for our young people.
Thank you, Mary Claire. Will you give that, Ronald? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor MacDonald.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Norrie MacDonald, Skiruru. Thanks again for the report, Mary Claire. I believed a couple of years ago, and I know we've had unprecedented circumstances in the intervening time with a change of director, change of chair, COVID, etc. So things haven't been normal at all. But and I commend the report, particularly from scholarly include pupils. I think it's a fantastic idea, which if successful can be exported, particularly to your own big schools here in Lewis. And looking into how we can best provide support for anybody that's suffering from any mental health anxieties when they're going through their schools. I also believe as well that safe spaces and anonymity and the provision of a professional counselling service for the pupils. I think it was raised before that our teachers were getting spread a little bit thinly when it came to guidance because they were going from their own particular subject to a guidance subject. And I think the message from the pupils was that they weren't feeling that they were getting particularly bespoke counselling services from the schools. And I think in light of what happened here was it 2 years ago, I think it was at an education committee when all hell broke loose across the road, we vowed then to provide funding for counselling at whatever cost to provide counsellors in the Nicholson, supposing it costs us £100,000 a year for 3 counsellors or 2 counsellors, however much a counsellor costs, that we would protect the mental health of our children in the schools. Now, I don't know what passes for a sense of urgency within the Comhairle. I'm beginning to wonder myself after 4 years, but I don't apportion any blame to anybody. But 2 years down the line, I hope it doesn't take another serious crisis within a school situation where somebody ends up hurt again for us to refocus our attention on mental health issues within the schools. And I'd like to urge that we proceed with a sense of urgency with this, to put in provisions for all of our pupils when it comes to provisions for their mental health. And if we can do everything we can to make that provision, then I'm using the word provision a lot here, just make sure that we proceed as quickly as we can and we don't have another meeting here in a year's time where we've had a report and done nothing again. We need to proceed quickly.
Thanks for that nod. Yeah, I don't know if I can come back on that, Marie Claire. You were nodding all the way through that. I think we're all on the same page here. We don't want another incident like that. We want to be helping our young people as best as we can.
If I can come in there,
Yeah.
I would say that the pilot in Scully and Clitch is a very short pilot. I thought it was really important that we work really closely with young people and not present them with a plan, but actually work with them. And that's why we have that advisory group. And what I'm hoping is that will be a short pilot, a short-term piece of work, which will then be replicated in each of our secondary schools across the authority. And it is our hope that we will do that this academic year. So moving already to discussions with Castle Bay and with Sir Scott and then on to the Nicholson. So it's very much in hand, and certainly we're working very hard to ensure that it happens in a timeliest time.
Thank you, Marie Claire. William?
Just briefly to say, counselling and family mediation, which I referred to earlier, they've got availability 24/7 to all the young people in our schools, and they're aware of that. And again, Christine presented at a previous committee and gave you a very full picture of the work that they do. In fact, I'm going down there tomorrow because I've never been in the facility. But if anyone wants to visit the facility and to have a further chat with Christine, I'm sure you'll be welcome.
Thanks for that, Willie. Councillor Charlie Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome all the comments in regards to the report. And thank you to Marie Claire and the way forward on that. And I would totally agree in regards to the points made by Councillor MacDonald. We do, and the young people, I've said it 2 years ago on that, the importance of appointing staff within the schools to take pressure off the guidance, and we need to be going that way. But the point I want to kind of bring is that when new community schools were in process many years ago, they had the system of budding, which worked really well. I can only take it from the experience when I was in the Nicholson Institute and working with the teaching staff and the senior pupils and the buddy system there, and they had their own safe space and they could meet at any time, and it worked very well. So that might be some information that will help Director and help Marie Claire to look at that old project and take it out, because it did work excellently with the support of teaching staff and the senior youth within the Nicholson Institute.
Thanks, Charlie. Marie Claire, you want to come back on that? Or? Are you okay?
Oh, yeah, I'm of an age that I do remember that time too, and it was a very successful project. Yeah, so certainly we'll look back at that, Charlie, and thank you for referencing that. We'll certainly have a look.
And Councillor Callum
Yeah,
McLean.
just coming back again on following up from my own question and then from what Councillor MacDonald said there. One of the what he reminded me of was Councillor MacDonald reminded me of was the problems that were in existence 2 years ago or previous to 2 years was in fact that the guidance staff in our biggest secondary here were how can I put it, overworked, and they had a subject to teach alongside their guidance. And I agree with you entirely what you say there, Councillor MacDonald, is that there was the children weren't getting the availability of the guidance teacher when they needed it. And that because the teacher was teaching. Has there been a move in the last 2 years to take guidance teachers to teach guidance only, or have they still got subject teaching element of their?
Yep, they still do have an element of their subject teaching, but in looking forward, we're going to work with the school, and I think Mary Claire said we will look at appointing counsellors to support guidance staff, and we have reduced some of the teaching time, but they are still teaching, and that's just a national pattern. And again, the funding could have been used to support guidance staff, but just the young people told us they would prefer somebody different to do the counselling in most instances, and I think it's just the anonymity side of it. But we will work on it and work on it quickly as we move forward.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from members? Okay. In that case, do members agree the recommendation at 3.1? Agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 8, and this report details the annual report of the Chief Social Work Officer on the statutory work undertaken during the period 1st April 2020 to 31st March 2021. Jack Livy is available to speak to the report and answer any questions. Jack, are you there? Jack, can you hear us? Give it a couple of minutes. Go on to the next item. Yeah. Okay, well, if you can hear us, Jack, we'll skip you just now. We'll go on to the next item and come back to you. Okay, so the next item is number 9, and that is the report providing a summary of the headline attainment performance in the broad general education P1 to S3 and senior phase S4 to S6. And Donald McLeod is available to speak to the report and answer any questions. Donald.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this report is being presented this year in unique circumstances for our schools. Typically, when we present attainment data and the attainment picture across the Western Isles, we are able to provide more trend and performance information over time. But the reality for a profession and working across our schools, across the whole sector, is that they have continued throughout the pandemic to work in very exceptional circumstances. And because of the nature of these exceptional circumstances and the experiences of our children and young people and our staff, the data that we're able to gather and share in terms of attainment performance has to stand alone on that basis. So the report here is a summary of 2 key indicators that we have about our overall academic performance. The first of these covers the section of the broad general education, which is from primary 1 to S3, and is based on the annual teacher survey of attainment within curriculum for excellence for P1 to S3. That was completely paused in the 2019-20 academic year and did return in the 2021 academic period, but with the absence of S3 data gathering. And this was in reflection of the significant demands and pressures on secondary schools for the alternative certification model for SQA. So there was a national decision to remove the data gathering for S3. So for 2021, the teacher survey was taken for P1, P4 and P7 performance in primary. Also, alongside that, there's data for the senior phase, which is S4 to S6, with the principal measure there being the performances SQA awards, specifically awards rather than exams, because a decision was made in December 2020 for a second year of cancellation of what would have been a traditional exam diet. As a result of that cancellation, across the third term from January to March, an alternative certification model was developed that challenged the system, but also learned from the challenges of the difficulties that were had with the SQA results of 2020. So taking these into account, the information that's presented in the report does stand alone on that basis. Looking at the broad general education performance, we're looking at the data in 6.1 and reflected on in 6.2. We had expected, and the initial indications on the feedback of pandemic impact was around particularly primary 1, but it's quite clear from our data that there's also potential impact more so actually across P4 and P7. There are two important caveats to this information. Whilst we can reflect potentially that some of this performance changes as a result of pandemic impact, it's also important to reflect on that partly this is about the evidence gathering and availability of assessment materials for primary teachers to make these judgments. So there's a few notes of caution around that. There was a significant period of national lockdown during the academic year, which did result in significant changes in the availability of assessment information for teachers to base that performance on. And you may see probably particularly across literacy in Gaelic and English, that performance is affected. Within literacy, it's important to note there are 3 subsets in the data, separate measures for listening and talking, reading and writing. And the collated information is only presentable for where children and young people have achieved all 3 areas. And for us in the Western Isles, the challenge has been more around the writing aspects of literacy, which have been the ones that have ultimately been most affected through remote and online learning and pandemic impact. So taking all that together, the schools at the moment during the course of this term have been working on drilling down into their own analysis for their own specific in-school data and looking at that picture. In the table that's provided in 6.1, the first column is the performance data for the current academic year concluded 2021, and the right-hand column gives the measurement of the same cohort of pupils the last time they were measured. So for P4 in 2021, they were the P1 of 2018. So you can compare the same cohort there in terms of their performance. There's a certain cross comparison as well that can be made in terms of, for instance, for P4 in 2018, we saw a 66.2% performance of achievement of first level P4. That in 2021 has actually increased to 74.3%. So there are positive stories in there as well, although there are the same caveats to that information. In terms of the senior phase, as I've alluded to already, we had 3 different assessment models in 3 years, which is detailed in 6.3, where in 2019 we had the traditional SQA exam diet, an entirely different model in 2020, and a revised model again in 2021. So with 3 different assessment structures in place, you can't draw comparisons meaningfully in any kind of way across the performance in these 3 different years. But what is important to give a context is the performance of pupils in the Western Isles in comparison with the averages seen across Scotland, which is what's provided in the table in 6.3. And it's important to note that across the boards, pupils performed exceptionally well in the SQA Awards model. Overall, we did see a reduction in presentations for SQA Awards, and the biggest driver for that was the removal of pupils who would have had a no award through this process. In traditional systems, they would have likely have been presented for an exam and had a no award, but the number of no award figures for 2021 has significantly dropped, and the reduction in presentations has mainly been through that source, because the in-school assessment model has already identified them as not likely to achieve the course and would have been a no award in the exam. And the one other thing that was highlighted in the report actually comes back to the summary in 2.6, which we'd want to acknowledge again, our national and sector leading performance in their post-school destinations as part of the culmination of all the learning in the school time, and seeing a post-school destination sustained 9 months after leaving school of 97.1%, being again the highest seen in the country, and is again a reflection of how well our school system is equipping our young people to achieve beyond school. and happy to get any questions from members on that report.
Thank you, Donald. Any questions or comments from members? Councillor Cal McLean.
So, sorry, I think I'm the harbinger of bad news all the time, but I'll try to get the good news first and then the bad news afterwards. Because the good news is thanks anyway, Donald, for the report. It's an honest report and it's a good report as well, in one sense. But as you highlighted yourself, there is a downturn in 6-1. But it's good to see the 6-3, the national fives and the hires have achieved better than the national, and that is encouraging to see that, and I congratulate the teachers on that one. It's the primary that is on a cursory glance of that, and as I look at it, I know you said you cannot draw comparisons, but when I look at this, it's a downward trend, and when there is a downward trend, we have to there's an alert, as there is, I'm sure, in the schools, and you've alluded to that already, but there is a significant drop. It's not a minor drop, it's a significant drop. And when, for instance, when you look at the drop from Gaelic literacy at P4, what was at P1 down to now at P4 at 85.9% at P1, you would expect a wee bit better or a lesser gap at P4, because at P1 they're coming in and some of them aren't, the literacy in Gaelic is very, very limited. But then at P4, they've had 4 years experience. But anyway, the table doesn't lie in that sense. You put the caveat in about COVID-19. Could I ask, is it the case that the curriculum needs an overhaul? Many people have said over the years, and I was one of these dinosaurs 5-6 years ago, that said the curriculum for excellence needed a huge overhaul. And that's been asked for by many head teachers. I'm sure you're probably asking for it yourselves, that it's dated, it's finished, it's done its course, it needs an overhaul. And teachers are being honest about their assessments when they're talking about attainment. And our teachers are good teachers, excellent teachers in the islands. I can honestly say that, having worked with many of them, and they're still teaching. And they're giving honest reflection. I'll give you an instance. Last week, I was speaking to a social subjects teacher. She said she had been working in a large school. She'd been teaching for 15 years. When she came in, first of all, she saw a shock. She saw a shock in the literacy in the levels of the children, in writing social subjects essays. This year, she says, they're almost illegible. It's gone that bad at second and third year. It's illegible, some of it, because their literacy and their literacy skills have gone down rather than gone up, or haven't stayed the same. She said she's seen in 15 years a dramatic downturn, and she says it herself, it's because of curriculum for excellence. It's because of this outdated thing. So I'm just asking you, I know maybe you cannot be honest enough to say it here, but maybe silence is fair. But maybe this is, I'm just suggesting this, that the curriculum, particularly at broad general education, that's where it's sitting, from P1 to S3, needs an overhaul.
Donald?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor McLean, for your comments. The curriculum, it's beyond the gift of this report to be able to reflect at the level that Councillor McLean has asked in terms of curriculum redesign. But I would reference in 2.1, and there's other reference to in the report as well, that there was freedom given to teachers in the period of curriculum recovery between 2 periods of lockdown that our teachers have worked through to adjust and operate a much more focused curriculum. And it was referenced that significantly the focus has been stripped back from other aspects of the curriculum for excellence to focus on core literacy, numeracy and health and wellbeing. And our teachers really embraced that and did go forward with that very strong focus on what was the recovery curriculum. There will always be views around the future and the use of curriculum for excellence, but in terms of the data that Councillor McLean has rightly highlighted here, there were ultimately 3 factors at play. There is the recovery curriculum, there is the aspects of pandemic impact, and as I've highlighted when I spoke initially, The literacy data in that table at the top of the third page is the collated performance across listening and talking, reading and writing. And achievement in literacy is only counted in that way when all three have been achieved by the young person. In the breakdown of that information, writing is the weaker area. And that's where the significant focus is on with the school's return to attendance. And it's a fair reflection, I think, of the reality of the many successes and achievements of digital and remote learning during the lockdown that many other areas have strengthened. But the teaching of writing in a remote environment is very challenging. And I think that's where I think some of the reflection has come. But the third and most important one here as well is that teachers had significant challenges in assessing coverage and depth during this particular gathering of attainment data. And if we can continue through the 21-22 academic year without disruption, I think we'll see significant improvement in this. Teachers had 2 long periods of lockdown disruption, and in some of our schools as well, an extended disruption due to other individual circumstances of COVID-19 affecting individual pupils. As a result of that, when teachers are looking at their suite of assessment evidence, I think it's fair to say that, as Councillor McLean has highlighted, we have a very professional and skilled teaching population, and they were challenged with being able to have sufficient assessment evidence over the disruption in the curriculum to make the most robust of judgments. And in reflection of that, we are working with Education Scotland, which I think it is referenced in the report. My eyes don't fall on the exact paragraph it's referenced in at the moment, but we are working with Education Scotland to invest in training with their teachers to support the assessment and moderation process. And that's the assessment and moderation of their own teacher judgment of coverage of curriculum for excellence. We're currently training 10 additional staff as quality assurance and moderation officers that will then be able to go and support their colleagues in the strengthening and validation of curriculum for excellence judgments. So I think without doubt there was an element of caution in the profession about making awards during the course of this year. And I think that will level itself back out again as we go into the data for the 21-22 academic year. And as Councillor McLean has rightly identified, there are positive pictures here too, in terms of some areas where there have been strengths and development. And I think the overall picture in numeracy, for example, is an improving one. But it's that suite of skills across literacy that is an area of focus for improvement for us.
Thanks, Donald. Very persuasive argument.
Thanks, Cal.
I'll just come in very briefly, if I may, and it's just a short answer to your question. Do we need a reform in terms of curriculum? Yes, we do, very much so, because I think the young people, the world they live in, and it's very different to the world that it was, you mentioned 15 years ago. I think we have to move towards the way that they're learning, and I think we need a lot more place-based learning and to get this balance between skills and knowledge. They're living in a digital world almost, a lot of them all the time at home. Then we're trying to teach them in traditional manners, and I think even more so in our secondary schools when they go to S1 because of the demands of the curriculum that's placed on this teaching staff. So I would welcome, and if you have an opportunity to contribute to Professor Ken Muir's Education Reform Group, or look at the OECD report that are all recommending major change, and I think we will see major change in our education system over the next 5 years. And I think we do need it because young people, children and young people are changing drastically, and we need an education system that meets their needs.
Thanks, William. Councillor McCormick.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. And I noticed myself the difficulty in literacy demonstrated in the table, but I wasn't unduly concerned about it when I consider the period of time that our young people have gone through. They haven't been in school for prolonged periods of time, and I've spoken to many parents who, one just yesterday told me that her child had hardly been in school at all over the whole period of COVID for one reason or another, and also telling me what a challenge it was for her to become a teacher for her child. And she realised that the job that teachers do is something somewhat different to what she had imagined. And that is a message that's come to me from a great many different people in our community. So it wasn't a surprise to me to see that there was an issue here with literacy, because that really does require an interaction between the teacher and the pupil and an ongoing interaction. And I'm confident that these figures will pick up once the children are back in school on a full-time basis, interacting with their teachers. I recognise that were I to go back as a teacher now, the situation would be completely different. Indeed, whilst I may have, say, the mathematical knowledge to teach mathematics, the method that is now used in schools to teach mathematics is something that I have no connection with at all. I would need to really beef up on my skills with my computer skills before I could do that. So we're talking about young people in a situation that I just do not recognize. It's something that I cannot come to terms with, despite the fact that I taught for nearly 40 years. I'm amazed in many ways at the achievements of our schools, and in particular the achievement at 2.6, yes, 97.1% of our leavers continuing to be in positive destinations 9 months after leaving school. That is a remarkable statistic, it really is. I would have to say that over the course of my own time as a teacher, we had high rates, but 97.1 in the circumstances in which our young people were being taught over the past couple of years is exceptional. It really is quite exceptional. And a young woman from my own village went away the other weekend to go to university for the first time. What an excitement for her. And thank goodness she could go to university this time. And I hope that most of her education will be in a one-to-one situation with her peers and in lectures and in all the other different aspects of learning, including going out and having fun with your pals, which is so, so important. What we're attempting to do here, and I think we've done it very well, is prepare our own young people to leave our islands. It's an unfortunate thing, but that's what we're doing. And we're hoping that if we can provide the circumstances and the jobs that at some point in the future they might come back. But I think on the whole, I am comfortable with this report, and it is, as Councillor McLean said, an honest report, and it reflects the difficult circumstances in which our young people have been learning over the past 18 months. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Angus. As one of the home guard teachers for the last year, and should I declare an interest? I've got a child in primary 3, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it was a very difficult year. I think the support given by the staff and teachers throughout lockdown was above and beyond. And the figures, they're not great, but I do have a confidence that they're going to go back up next year, just for that factor alone. Convener?
I think, just very briefly, I don't think there's any surprise in terms of the issue with literacy, and I think that's largely due to things like that. And I get when I get texts, I mean, I get really angry when they don't spell the word right, and they just put a few letters in one after the other, and you're supposed to interpret that as something completely different. And that happens not just with secondary school children, but in primaries as well. And I think that's where it's going to be difficult. It's very, very different to numeracy, where you're stuck with numbers from 1 to 0, and you can reorder them in any way you like. But there's a big difference, with literacy, and I think that will be a real challenge for the education system going forward, in terms of people being able to present themselves as people who are by then probably in their late teens looking for jobs, and your chances are very slim if you're not able to write a decent application form for a job. So I think it is really important that we do that. But there is no doubt that this technology is something that they find it far too easy to use when writing with a pen is much more difficult.
There's a course in emoji use, they'll be fine, but Councillor Mackenzie.
Yeah, yeah, and I put words in and they come out different. Well, I think just to say, I think first of all that I think Angus has just done himself out of a supply teacher's job. He hasn't given himself a very good credit. But I do agree with a lot with what you've said, actually. And looking at the figures, I noticed that the Gaelic and English are very. That is quite consistent. I don't think the curriculum for excellence is relevant as far as this is concerned, because whatever you think of it, rightly or wrongly, you know, both years, 18 and 21, are based on the same curriculum for excellence, presumably. So I take it from this, having said that COVID is the real reason why, you know, there's been the reduction there has been, and mobile phones as well. As far as the secondary is concerned, one thing that is reflected in there is that it's consistently higher. Corn and Eilean is consistently higher than the national average from what I see there. And I assume that these figures are correct. So that is encouraging from that point of view.
Thank you, Ray. Any other comments or questions from members? No, okay, thank you very much. Do members agree with the recommendation at 3.1? Agreed. Would you like to take a comfort break just now? Maybe 10 minutes? Or would you like to just carry on? Comfort break?
There's tea and coffee available in the members' lounge.
Okay, so we'll come back. It's 10:02 just now. Back at 4? Yeah, come back at 4. Okay, thank you. Officer annual report, and the report details the annual report of the Chief Social Work Officer on the statutory work undertaken during period 1st of April 2020 to 31st March 2021. And Jack Libby is available to speak to the report and answer any questions. Jack.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, committee. The report table today details social work activities for the reporting year 2021, with a particular emphasis on the pandemic response from and by social work services. Given this committee's particular interests, the early discussion around children and young people's mental health was particularly interesting and encouraging for myself. The pandemic has not been an easy time for children, and indeed their parents, I would add. And it's very encouraging to see children re-engaging with schools, re-engaging with the wider community, and hopefully some of the things that went undone throughout the pandemic are, children are able to catch up now with their emotional development. It's interesting in terms of my Chief Social Work Officer remit, which spans the generations from cradle to grave. And as this report details, within adult services, one of the major challenges presenting us at the moment, as a profession, but indeed as a wider community, relate to workforce challenges. We have an ageing population. The demographics are stacked against us in some respects. We've got a decreasing child population. And it's that interconnectedness across the generations, the dependency the older generation has on the younger generation. So I suppose in terms of my current remit, it is particularly important to keep all our children, including most vulnerable children, on track with a clear focus ahead of them. Assist them, in addition to the support that parents provide them with and other caregivers, to make the best of their lives. And hopefully one day, if they do decide to leave the island, as Councillor McCormack referenced earlier on, that we provide them with the kind of community that they have a real desire to return to one day, and support us in terms of some of these workforce challenges that not only exist today, but undoubtedly will be presenting themselves in the future. So I'm happy to get any questions in terms of the report. I appreciate that was a quick flyover. So thank you. And again, thank you, Chair.
Jack, any questions or comments from members? Zach, would you like to go first?
Thank you, Chair. Just a word of congratulations, first of all, to Mr. Livy on his appointment as Chief Social Work Officer. The statutory background to the post is set out in the report, and I was very pleased to make that appointment. Mr. Libby is uniquely qualified for the job, given he's been Children's Services Manager as well as Head of Community Care. And tribute also, I think, to David Gibson, our former Chief Social Work Officer, for his work on this report. Having been acting Chief Officer, as it were, for part of the pandemic year, I would have to observe social work is one of the unseen or less seen services throughout the pandemic. And I think I commend the information in this report very much to members. You'll be pleased to note that, as well as the service issues, most of the budget has been delivered, and not just as a result of vacancy savings on an underspend. There's been very careful financial management here as well as a number of vacancies, not least Mr. Gibson's post as Head of Children's Services. So thanks also to those who are acting up currently in various important positions within Children's Services. The challenges to social work are well known and they're well articulated here, and the review of adult social care, which we'll talk about on Thursday, really places social work at a crossroads as to its future as a profession, and whether it really becomes part of an NHS function or whether it remains as an independent function through the local government settlement. And we'll cover these issues on Thursday. The challenges here, as I've said, are well noted, but also so are the achievements. So I think there is much in this report which this committee, with its responsibility for children and families, can be satisfied. And I thank, as Chief Executive, I thank Mr. Libby and his colleagues for that work. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. Councillor McCormick.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Jack, for your report, which is a very good report and really quite encouraging given the difficult circumstances in which you are obviously working. I have had over this council quite a bit of involvement with the children's services aspect of it through Graham and also through Mr. Gibson. And I've been hugely impressed at the work that's done in that area, and particularly with our looked after children, which is quite exemplary, the work that's done there and the achievements of these young people who are living in very difficult circumstances sometimes. And it's very difficult to support them. So I would like to congratulate you on the work that's done in that area. The Chief Executive had made reference, however, to the other side of your responsibility, that of home care and social work involvement in that. And I have some fear and trepidation about the future, and I'd be interested in what you might have to say at this point. I am very much in favour of the idea that there should be a national care service going forward, but I'm also very much of the view that it should be run locally, that it should be based locally, funded nationally through taxation, and we should be given the appropriate resources to run the service. I don't think at this moment that we have the appropriate resources, and the fact that you're managing to run a service is commendable. I wonder what you feel the effect will be on social work of a national care service. What is it likely to mean for us here? Are we going to have to expand, if it goes the way I would like it to go, are we going to have to expand our social work department so as to support a full care service for the future, which is what I would like to see happening?
Jack, the points are well raised. I think we're going to cover a lot of it on Thursday at the seminar. But yeah, if you'd like to, in relation to the education and children's services side of things, Mr. McCormick can answer.
Okay, so in terms of children's services specifically, irrespective of what the outcome of the review is, the reality is we will need the right people in the right places locally. The service will be delivered locally, and we will need a well-trained, skilled and responsive workforce, making local decisions for local children. That's my own view.
It's a good aspiration to have. Councillor McLean?
Yes, well said.
Yeah.
That's a good answer to that. Well, there's one, maybe I should be asking Mr. Burns, but I see that there's a paragraph in here. You've got a heavy workload. I'm seeing this here, but it's in its accountability. 1 minute you're accountable to the chief executive, and then you're accountable to the HIB chief officer. I'm not saying this to you. That does seem to be a conflict. Is that a conflicting role? This is in paragraph of the CC 1, 2, 3, the fourth one down. Role of CSW. The CSW is accountable to the chief executive with regard to the cone of social work, and then it's accountable to the IGIB chief officer, reports to the cone through the established committee structures. So maybe tongue in cheek, you got two bosses.
I've got a single response. My response to that would be I've got a single responsibility, and that is to look out for the interests of the most vulnerable in society, in our community, and I've got more than one audience.
Excellent answer. I think you should be in the chair. Mr. Bird, would you like to come back in?
Yeah, just to explain that, the law requires that the council appoint a chief social work officer with direct accountability to the chief executive, but Mr. Libby's principal duties, as you pointed out, are head of community care, which has a line management to the chief officer. for health and social care. So he does indeed have two routes through which to go.
31, yeah. Thanks very much for that. Any other questions or comments from members? Online. Okay, thank you. In that case, do members agree with the recommendation at 3.1? Great. Thank you very much, Jack. Next up is item 10, and that this report provides outline information and estimated costs for proposals to develop an all-weather pitch facility at Stornoway Primary School. Donald MacLeod is available to speak to the report and answer any questions. Donald?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this report takes forward further information following a report that went to the previous sitting of the committee and links back to a decision that was lodged at the budget setting meeting of the 23rd of February 2021 in relation to our commitment to construct an all-weather pitch at Stornoway Primary School. The request was to provide costs for that proposal and also through the discussions with the steering group and the parent council and the school, there was also a request to cost the same facility but covered with a steel frame and canvas construction. The costs the project was consulted with Assets Finance and Resources colleagues and they have provided an outline draft drawing of how that footprint would look on the current playing field at Stornoway Primary, which is in the appendix, and also in paragraph 6.2 and 6.3. These colleagues have provided estimated costs based on initial survey work of the playing surface currently there where it's proposed to go, putting out the main points of the different aspects of the construction that they would be able to cost at the time, with the caveat that more detailed survey works would be required to take place depending on what model was proposed to go forward. The costs are set out, as I mentioned, in 6.2, and also the considerations around funding are also described at 6.9. It's important to note as well that, as well as this being a project that has a capital cost, there is also, in the terms of the proposals here, an annual revenue cost as well, tied to potentially the routes towards funding and to the annual upkeep and maintenance of any such facility. During the process of the compilation of the report, there were further consultations as well with the school and with the parent council, and as well as the two main proposals that were asked for the report. When that was discussed with these parties, they identified the potential for exploring a third solution. The reason for that being what was highlighted in the report in consultation with specialist sports staff around whilst there are benefits to the construction of an all-weather pitch, 3G style all-weather pitch similar to the design of Smith Avenue facility, it would come with quite significant restrictions in how it would be able to be legitimately used in a school setting, and that they were keen to consider a construction that involved something that had more of a capability for multi-purpose use. So as well as considering that the two options that were requesting to be explored and costed, there was some consideration around exploring a third way with the parent council and the school. So the report seeks to provide that information and also then seeks to have direction from the Comhairle about how it wishes to proceed on this matter.
Thank you very much, Donald. Before we open up for questions and comments, I just want to mention the fact that we've had quite good dialogue with the parent council recently about this issue, and as Donald touched on the third option, I met last night with Rona, Mari and Sarah just to go through the email that they sent to you. I believe you all received it yesterday, the email. In the email they state emphatically that our position is to pursue achievement of an indoor multi-use sports arena, the second costed option. So I just want to get a bit more clarity on that from them, because later on they mentioned that they weren't keen on the all-weather surface, the artificial grass material, and what they said quite clearly was that the covered surface was what they were after, but not the artificial grass. The covered area, they felt it would open up a lot more opportunities with a different surface that could be used for different activities, whole school assemblies, prize givings, lunch and after school clubs, drama, inter-school activities, community use. to my mind, what they're talking about and what they suggest, it's what the school want. It sounds to me like it would be a better option for them than the all-weather pitch. I know when we put forward the proposal for an all-weather pitch, that was the thinking at the time. That's what the schools were looking for. But in consultation with the parent council, it seems to be that they're after something a little bit more flexible, something that's going to benefit the community of the school a bit more. So we agree at the budget setting to come back with the costs for the all-weather pitch and the covered all-weather pitch, which the officers have done. Really good report, so it's good to see it here. And like I say, the feedback from the parent council and from the department when we've had discussions about it, it seems we're pretty much saying the same thing. We're wanting something that's going to benefit the school, and we're wanting something that it's going to leave a legacy for the young people in the area. Obviously, the prices have come back for the all-weather pitch and the all-weather pitch with a cover. At the moment, we don't have a costing for this potential third option. So my suggestion and proposal, and I'm not stifling debate here, I'm just putting forward what I think the way forward we should take is, I'm going to propose an additional or alternative recommendation that we bring our report to the next committee series, outlining the construction costs and financial package to deliver for the capital and revenue for the covered, now what was the phrase, indoor multi-use sports arena, I believe was the terminology the parent council were quite keen on. So that's I'm throwing that one out there just now. So if we want to have just a discussion about the report and my proposal, that would be appreciated. Any questions or comments? Roddy?
Yep. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm really glad and happy that we've got to this particular stage. There seemed to have been a bit of confusion around all-weather pitch and Muggas. That's really the crux of the matter. When I engaged with the parent council after their decision, they at that point were calling it an all-weather pitch, covered or uncovered. It now transpires, and it's clear from the email, and it's clear from your meeting last night, and it's clear from the use they plan for the venue, that they want a standalone covered multi-purpose sports facility. And I think, that's what the parent council have articulated to you. I think that's in line with what we would think would be the best thing for them in terms of use. And therefore, I think, if we can get the figures together for that, and if we can get the plans together for that, we should be able to approve this next series. If we can get to work on that singular thing, because now we know that we're in line with what the parent council and the parents' wishes is, the community's wishes. There was a bit of dubiety over what they wanted. I was very pleased that you managed to meet with them last night and get clarity on it. And I was also very pleased that they made clear, if you recall in their email to everyone yesterday, they put in bold, let's be clear about this. So I think it'd be great if we can bring that facility home for Stornoway Primary. It's what the parents want, which we see as the most flexible use, and it'll be in response to earlier pleas. So I'm delighted to support what you're saying there, and I'm sure most members will be quite happy to do that as well. I know Stornoway members like Councillor Ray and Councillor Nicholson have been very involved and supportive, but this gives the parents what they want, and it's our job to find the money to do that now, and we hope to do that by December series and get cracking with it.
Thank you, Roddy. Councillor Charlie Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Leader. I welcome the information from you, Chair, and from Leader today to the commitment of what the parents and the pupils and staff want in Stornoway Primary, and to take it forward, because this is an inspirational project. It will take forward on the basis of leaving another legacy that this council has done over many years, from the Nicholson Institute to Skolnaru to North US, Balavanik. I could carry on. So after many years, I'm very, very happy, and I'm sure other members in Stornoway are very, very happy to the commitment of bringing it forward and taking this project ahead for the benefit of the pupils, staff, that in Stornoway Primary. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Murray was on. I don't know if Hand was up. Is he still there?
Sorry.
Sorry, Chair.
So Gordon, on you go.
Oh, sorry. Thanks, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee. It was just there seems to be a lot of clarification. Are we saying that it's an covered facility with the artificial grass as the flooring? I think that was the
No. So the preference is not to have artificial grass, as it felt it would inhibit the activities that could take place.
Is that the preference from the parent council, you're saying?
Absolutely, yeah. We had that meeting last night and they clarified that position. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Sure.
Oh, sorry, Convener.
Just very briefly, as leader said, we should all be thankful for the work that has been done. And I have to say that the initial report it leaves quite a bit to be desired, and I hope that at the conclusion there, I see that that we see information that makes a great deal of sense to us to bring that forward, because there were lots of maybes in the report to begin with, and it doesn't bode us well not to have sight of that and an understanding of what is being proposed. But it's very clear from what you said yourself, Chair, that is now currently the position of the school board and the school, and I do think that this is something that's worth pursuing within the timescales that the leader was talking about. I think it's a great shame that this wasn't done during the schools project, because Stornoway Primary is by far the biggest primary school in the Western Isles, and it's a real shame that we didn't have the funding then to do that, albeit that North Uist got the benefit of a new school as part of it as well. And I do think it's incumbent on us to make sure that this is done timeously, and it is also done to the standard that we would expect in any of our schools. So I think we've reached a point where there is agreement between ourselves and the school and the parent council, and I do think get on with it basically.
Yeah, thank you very much, Convener. Yeah, I agree with that entirely. I think if we can get something to the December series that keeps the momentum going, we had hoped to have spades in the ground this year, but it'll take a wee while to get to that stage. But we're moving along that track quite nicely, and I think all being well, we'll get to that point in December. I just want to say a quick thanks to the children and young people of Stornoway Primary for that video that they sent around as well. And you've heard it straight from their mouths how important it will be to them, so thank them for that. So with the alternate recommendation, would you like to?
Sure.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't see your lights, Frey.
Thank you. Well, I know exactly. Well, I knew exactly before I came to the meeting today what the parents wanted, and the parents' council wanted, and the teachers wanted, and the pupils obviously wanted, and they have wanted this over many years. And I'm very pleased that yourselves, your contribution, and the leaders' contribution, and that we seem to have come to this stage. But I want to just ask one question. Are we now talking about one option only? And what's coming before us, if it's going to be delayed another 3 months, what's going to come before us then is going to be the exact breakdown of what's going to happen in that one option. Is that the way?
That's what I'm proposing, but if you're...
Yeah. Okay. And the other thing is the grass option, was that actually agreed or put forward?
The artificial grass, or?
No. What are you saying? It's not artificial grass?
It's not artificial grass.
All right. Okay. No. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ray. Derek.
Okay. Pardon me, thank you. The wording put forward for yourself that a further report will be submitted to the next series of meetings on the construction costs and a revenue and capital financial package for a multi-purpose covered sports facility.
Are members happy with that?
Agreed.
Charlie, yeah.
Seconded.
Excellent. Thanks, Charlie.
Chair, I mean, I'm fully fully in agreement with that, but I do think we need, as a council, to see what the specification is before we start talking about pricing, particularly given the construction industry at this moment in time. And that's a bit that was lacking in the other two proposals. And I do think that it's incumbent on us to research that and to come back with something that we know will work.
Yeah, we can give that commitment, Donald. Yeah. I know Callum's not here, is he?
Yes, absolutely, Chair. Yeah, we were operating in a difficult climate around this because we were operating almost without brief at times. And now I feel if we can get to this point, we will have a clearer steer to be able to bring a clear and coherent, votable report through to get this progressed.
Thank you very much. Okay, and do we agree with that recommendation then? Agreed? Okay, thank you. And just I want to say thanks to all the members and the parents and staff that have got us to that stage as well. And the last item is item 11, that's reports outstanding, and that's for noting. Second item. Which one have I got? Oh, the private, yes, of course. It's on the next page, do we? What would you? Reports outstanding, so do we agree to note reports outstanding? Agreed.
Okay, so we'll just move into private.
Now we'll move into private.
If you could just give us give me a couple of minutes just till Stephen